Okay, the skateboard intro was a bad idea, but regardless, I have an important question for you. You know Tony Hawk? You know, that guy who went down a slope on a wheeled plank and spun 1 degree 900 times over and managed to land without falling over and dying, that Tony Hawk? Yeah, him. I like to watch skateboarding, and I really like the culture that surrounds it. Now, could I even graze a board in real life? No. But you know what I can graze in real life? That's right, a PS2 controller. And you know what a PS2 controller can do? Control PS2 games. And what is a PS2 game? And also PS1 and 64 and GameCube and stuff. When I think Tony Hawk, I think PS2. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater. An arcade-style skateboarding game series focused on completing missions and getting high scores by pulling off insane combos on your board, featuring popular real-life pro skaters such as Jeff Rowley, Alyssa Steamer, Bob Burnquist, Paul Rodriguez, Rodney Mullen, Darth Maul, Bucky Lasek, Rune Glifberg, and Eric Costin, on top of being able to create your own custom skater. To me, Pro Skater is one of the most rewarding and pleasing games to play. I'm trying not to say satisfying, I know I use that word too much. There's absolutely a learning curve to it. You can't just pick up a controller and immediately know what to do, but once you figure it out, hell yeah, this is awesome. There are a ton of tricks at your disposal, and that number increased as new entries were released. Because of that, no matter what obstacle is in your way, you can continue your combo. And that's not even mentioning the special tricks. Real trick or not, chaining one into a combo looks cooler than DoorDash you didn't realize was delivered over 10 minutes ago. And one of the best parts of Tony Hawk? The soundtrack. Each game uses licensed music with a focus on rock, punk ska, hip-hop, and most of the picks are fantastic. I would play some for you, but I don't think Mr. Mohan would like that. The series was developed by Neversoft, a subsidiary of Activision. It debuted in 1999, found huge success, and thus had yearly releases until 2007 when Neversoft stepped away from the series due to declining interest and popularity, opting to work on Guitar Hero and Call of Duty in the meantime. But the Tony Hawk series wasn't over just because of this. While Neversoft was busy, the newborn studio Robomoto would take over, putting out their very first game, Tony Hawk Ride, in 2009, and it wasn't very good. So instead of a mainline Tony Hawk game, this is more of a linear spin-off game with a realistic skateboard peripheral you stand on and actually use as a skateboard. Only problem is, it didn't really work at all. 46 on Metacritic. So, Robomoto looked at the response, said, "Oh boy, this ain't good. Let's make a sequel." It still didn't work. I mean, I'll give this to them. It did better on Metacritic. Also, while I was working on this video, a Kickstarter got announced for a skateboard peripheral that's pretty much exactly like the Tony Hawk Ride board. What games would this work with? In 2012, Robomoto went and made a more traditional Tony Hawk game, a remake of the first 2 Pro Skater games. That's actually not a bad idea. Oh wait, never mind, it's not actually a full remake and is really more of a best of compilation, and it's painfully mediocre and is way too floaty and buggy to hell and back. I don't know what I was expecting. 3 games in, Robomoto isn't exactly proving their worth in handling the Tony Hawk series. Their highest average score is only 66. They not only should step it up, they need to, especially with the task at hand. Activision's licensing deal with Tony Hawk was set to expire at the end of 2015, and to end that deal with a cruddy remake of the original 2 games just wouldn't do it. They need to push out just one more Birdman game while they still have the time. So come November 2014, Tony Hawk himself announced that they were doing exactly that, and it was later revealed that this game was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. This isn't the 5th Tony Hawk game. Following Pro Skater 4 in 2002, the series moved on to subtitle entries rather than numbered ones: Underground, Underground 2, American Wasteland, etc. Bearing that in mind, I think it would be fairest to judge this game as more of a sequel to that game rather than the latest non-Robomoto entries. At E3 2015, Activision showed off Tony Hawk 5 for the first time, and it looks, oh my god. Oh no. Ooh. These graphics, they ain't tasty. And that was a pretty dang popular opinion. But at least Robomoto listened to the feedback and changed the art style to a cel-shaded style, which just looks cheap. And then the game came out. 6.5 out of 10 ain't bad. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 in its release date was a buggy, broken, unfinished piece of shit that to many was a complete slander to the original Tony Hawk games. 3.5, 2 out of 10. This game was not good. Robomoto would eventually put out some patches for the game, some of which adding new levels, but to many, it seems these patches did little to nothing to actually fix the game. And so, the Tony Hawk series met its fate after 16 years, ending with a garbage attempt at a proper revival that only Game Informer could call good. I have a bit of an ironic soft spot for bad games, or at least games that are bad for funny reasons. I'm not talking about games that are incredibly boring or blatant cash grabs. I more so mean games that, for example, are riddled with bugs that can give humorous results. Pro Skater 5's just that. I know this game is bad. I've seen the reviews, I've seen the fan reception, I've seen the glitch compilations, and I'm curious. I want to see just how horrendous this game is in the flesh. Why? A. It's funny. B. I love Tony Hawk's proclamation. C. I'm curious, how does it feel to play? You can't really tell just by looking at a video. How does it compare to the feel of all the other THPS games? Probably worse. But most of all, can I play this game and still have fun with it? Probably not. Oh, well, this bodes well. Apparently the data on the disk itself amounts to 4.3 gigabytes, and with the patch being 6 gigs, that means that more than half of the game is just patched. Dear God. I'm impatient, goddammit! Let me play the video game! Why does he look so disappointed? Oh, well, I'll give it to the game. The intro movie is pretty cool, albeit a bit devoid of cool effects like the older ones. Not a fan of this whole orange filter with generic-looking white text. This message appears every time you start the game. Get used to it. Hopping into the tutorial, the game controls fine. It's definitely nowhere near the heights of the controls of the classic games, but I guess it works. If I had to describe it compared to the older entries, I guess I would say heavier. Why is the camera so close up to Tony though? I can see him. I don't need this. The skating mechanics also work okay, but there are a few small things that soil the pants of this experience just a bit. For example, ollieing off of a revert rarely works, making it a lot harder to combo off of, and trying to manual off a revert isn't much easier. The timing is incredibly strict, much stricter than the other games. There's also the new move, the Super Slam, which essentially just makes you fall at a faster speed so you can land on a rail or whatever. It's an okay idea, but there's one major issue with it. It's mapped to the triangle button, the same button you use for grinds. Meaning, you might try to do a grind, but instead you just don't and end your combo. That's lame. There is an option in the settings to change the Super Slam from a single triangle press to a double triangle press. I guess that makes it a bit better, but at the same time, why not just use the L2 button? As it is, it's just a second button to revert with. Unfortunately, the Super Slam was just one added move for several removed ones. I can't power slide, I can't do grind extensions, I can't do manual extensions, I can't transfer in midair to even myself out, I can't do double or triple flip tricks, and some of the returning tricks don't exactly feel good to pull off. There's practically no impact to a wall plant, and look at how slow you spin in the air. This is with max spin stats. Compare that to max spin and say underground. I can pull off a 900 no problem. And to top it all off, I don't like that wall rides are automatic. Why are they automatic? Worst of all, I can't do special tricks. Instead of just using the traditional special trick system, which everyone already liked and had no problem with, in this game, you fill your special meter to enter a special mode, where you do special tricks with the regular trick inputs. You can't customize these, and a good chunk of the quote special tricks are just tricks that were regular tricks in previous games, like the triple kickflip. The bar takes forever to fill up, too. Look how fast I can fill it in Pro Skater 3. And now compare it to 5. And if you fill the bar in the middle of a combo, you can't use the special until you end the combo. That's a pretty fucking huge oversight, Mr. Robomoto. Now that I'm done with the tutorial, it's time to get into the main part of the game, missions. Tony Hawk games have some awesome missions. Start an earthquake in LA, McTwist over the helicopter, that one where you can only use tricks from specific Tony Hawk games, and tons more that are insanely creative and cool. The first 3 Pro Skater games use a more arcade style format, where you complete as many missions as you can within a 2-minute time limit, while 4 and onwards have you speaking to fully voiced NPCs who assign you missions. Pro Skater 5 uses the 4 onwards format, which, yeah, I'm fine with that. Some specific missions, like collecting the skate and combo letters and finding a set amount of objects around the level, were moved into the free skating mode before you start a mission, which is a fine idea. And speaking of starting the missions, where are the NPCs? Who the f*** is this generic faceless arrow looking guy? That's boring. I would have taken a generic NPC with a text box over this. The missions themselves, some of them are fine, and about what you'd expect. Get a certain score, do a combo, collect a bunch of items, that's all fine. Nothing offensive. But what about those wild missions that make Tony Hawk Tony Hawk? THPS 5 has a couple of interesting ones that weren't in the classic games. In this one, you gotta keep doing tricks while your head grows progressively faster to stop it from exploding. There's one where you have to do specific types of tricks over specifically colored orbs called Birdman. There's this one where you have to push a bunch of oversized beach balls out of a pool. The mission ever. I mean, I kinda like it when you push one ball out and it knocks a whole bunch more out. It's like pool. No pun intended. There's also one where you have to destroy a bunch of drones for some reason. Later on, they introduce one where you shoot balls out of your board by flipping it to hit targets. And don't forget the incredible Go Through the Rings mission, Game of the Year. Wait, no. All of these missions are okay, they're passable, but compared to the insane ones we saw early on, they feel so cheap. And some of them aren't even original to this game. Both the Birdman and Big Head modes were actually introduced in THPS HD 3 years earlier and were reused in 5 by Robomoto. But hold it, this is only the first level. The crazier missions usually aren't introduced until later. Let me try the missions for the second level. Let's see, we have getting a good score in combo, okay, collecting items, doing tricks to stop your head from exploding, going through rings, pushing balls out of a pool. Birdman, you see where I'm going with this. Practically every mission type is repeated across every single level. Very rarely do the levels have any unique missions to them. And also, the repeating ones can be really clunky. Look at this barrel one, they had to have realized how unfun this was. So yeah, in the end, there are no chaotic and crazy missions. It's all just the same boring junk that you never want to do more than twice. Most of the missions are incredibly easy, there were only a couple I had any difficulty with. It should be pretty obvious at this point that this game was incredibly rushed. God, what happened here? Did Robomoto blow its entire budget on the shirt physics on Tony Hawk? You know what, I don't want to play as Tony Hawk, that's like playing as Mario in Mario Kart. Other Tony Hawk games have a pretty good character creator called Create-A-Skater. The older entries are pretty limited, but most of the later ones are pretty good. And look at how fun the options are. I eat dirt, the perfect shirt for me. Alright, customize skater. Where is Create-A-Skater? There's only pro skaters here. Oh. This is our Create-A-Skater. Preset heads and bodies with virtually no customization. No changing hairstyle, no changing facial features, no changing separate clothing pieces, no changing height and build. This isn't even saved as a separate custom skater, by the way. This is just Tony Hawk with a traffic cone on his head. You get hardly any options to start with, and you have to buy the majority of items, of which there aren't really that many anyway. And the actual shop is just dumb. You can buy different heads and bodies and stuff, but you don't actually get to see what you're buying before you buy it. You only get a silhouette. And some of these cosmetics cost over $50,000. Bear in mind that you get around $250 for completing a mission satisfying the sick condition. How long do you think I'm gonna play this game to have that kind of disposable income? Let alone 6 times over. And remember that whole silhouette thing? That, combined with the cost of these things, created a pretty freaking dumb situation for me. Here's the tea. I spent like 3 hours grinding cash because I knew each console version of Pro Skater 5 had exclusive skaters. The Xbox versions have Cuphead, Mugman, and the guy from Sunset Overdrive, and the PlayStation versions have Sackboy, Ratchet, and Sweet Tooth. So I was like, hey, I like Ratchet and Clank, I want the Ratchet head. Unfortunately for me, I did not do enough research before starting the grind. I saw the silhouette in the menu and thought it was a helmet from one of the Ratchet games I hadn't gotten to yet, because look, ears. In retrospect, that was pretty stupid, because why wouldn't I assume they would just make it Ratchet's head, and also the ears don't really look as much like Ratchet's ears as I thought they did at the time, but that's besides the point. So I repeated some of the easier missions with different skaters for like 3 hours, came back with $28,000, capitalism, and then realized it was the fucking Robomoto robot. Yeah, so it turns out the console-exclusive skaters were a downloadable add-on only and aren't obtainable anymore. I'm very sad. I want my 3 hours back. I miss Create-A-Skater. Just goes to show that this whole, oh, the things in the menu are black so you don't actually know what you're buying before you buy it thing is stupid. Do you want me to judge what to buy based on if the model has boobs or not? Now I'm stuck with the symbol of a dead company on a skateboard and a $28,000 sized hole in my pocket. Well, what about the other guest skaters, the ones on all platforms? I take it back, this is the greatest game of all time. This is just cool. It would be alright if I could just shred it as Leonardo, but the fact he's shaded to be in the comic art style is just the butter on the corn muffin. There's also the protagonist from King's Quest, which you can't unlock anymore because of conditions I'll mention later, freaking Octodad, and Tyler the Creator. Also, side note, there were only heads for the console exclusive characters. You don't get matching bodies for the character heads. So congratulations, Sackboy is now Skin Boy. I'm disturbed, I miss Creative Skater. Most of the time I just ended up playing as Aaron Jaws Hamaki with a toxic waste bucket on his head. It's how I feel while playing this game. Infected. Pro Skater 5's visuals are not very good. At the same time, it's almost passable. Keyword almost. I think a good chunk or even most of the game's visuals are straight up bad. Tony Hawk's Underground from 2003 surpasses it. Yeah, the resolution is much lower, but its actual art direction is way better. I don't like the cell shading, it looks weird. The skaters look like they're made out of rubber. Maybe they are, judging by how they look when they fall. The realistic art style works much more in Pro Skater's favor. Some scenes look alright and have okay lighting, but they're few and far between. Remember Pro Skater HD from earlier? Well, it might not have played well, I'll give this to it. It does look pretty good, a whole lot better than 5. It manages to pull off the realistic art style too. Also, I really dislike how the UI for this game looks. The font they use for the text is just so plain and unfitting. And the way it just slides on screen in certain instances just looks so cheap. And look at this loading screen. Why is it just a sky? I mean a better one in like 10 minutes. How about the levels themselves? They suck. In a nutshell, all of the levels look and play like they were made in a level editor. I wouldn't be surprised if they were, actually. Remember how intelligently designed the levels of Pro Skater's past were? I'll make an example out of one of my favorite levels, Airport from Pro Skater 3. You start at the top of the airport with a few options at your disposal. You can go down the middle where you can grind on the conveyor belt rails or get on top of the ATMs and lockers to grind up on the fluorescent lights. Alternatively, you can jump behind the counter on the right and go down a hidden conveyor belt to an open area with a helicopter. From there, the two paths collide at the metal detectors. Another set of escalators lead to the gate, and heading down this staircase leads you to where the moving stuff happens. I don't know what to call this, I'm sorry. The point is, Airport is a fantastically designed level that takes the concept of an airport and runs with it, using its features and decor to its advantage to make an epic skate park. Yeah, there are a few conveniently placed quarter pipe-shaped walls for you to trick off of, but they're worked into the walls themselves to appear as a natural part of the airport. They don't feel out of place visually, and you have to take some creative liberties to make an effective level. On to Pro Skater 5, none of what I just said applies. The opening level, the Barracks, is a pretty standard skate park based on a real-life skate park, something Pro Skater has done before. In that regard, nothing here generally feels out of place, I guess, but it's just not a particularly interesting level. Think about opening levels of past games. The warehouse, the airplane hangar, the foundry. This is boring. The second level is a beach-themed level, except, plot twist, it's not a beach level. It's a standard skate park with a beach in the background. You could replace the beach with a city and it would feel exactly the same. Outside of that, the only beach-themed element is a singular bonfire. Cool. Oh, well, Harry, if you think you would be so good at designing a beach level, then do it. Okay. What if there were two protruding areas of concrete you could only cross by grinding on top of a row of volleyball nets on the sand? How about instead of just some random grind rails going to and from the bonfire, there was a spit roast you could grind on? What if there was a giant sandcastle you could do tricks on? What if there was a boardwalk you could grind on the rail of and visit some of the shops? No, f*** you, said Robomoto as they put a ramp in front of sand. School 3. This one just pisses me off. First of all, this isn't School 3. The first Pro Skater had School, a pretty cool map set in a schoolyard. Pro Skater 2 had School 2, which was also a pretty cool map set in a schoolyard. Pro Skater 3 didn't have a school map, but Pro Skater 4's opening level was college and was essentially School 3. So School 3 isn't School 3. Second, calling this School 3 sounds both lazy and like nostalgia bait to me. This was the best you could come up with? Third, this is just School 2! And I don't mean it's similar to School 2, this is a near direct clone of School 2 with a section removed and these random balls added. You can kick them into a goal, they don't do anything. Why not make it so that kicking them during a combo adds to your combo chain or something? It seems so obvious. The same goes for the bunker, it's just warehouse with an added section. Lame. And the rest of the levels, they're just boring. I don't like any of them in particular. Except the ski resort one, that one's pretty cool. Why does this ramp launch you 70,000 feet upwards? None of these levels have any pedestrians, moving traffic, there are hardly any interesting or dynamic elements. These levels are like oatmeal made with water. I'll eat it, but I'm not going to enjoy it, and you can bet your ass I'm going to critique it. Most levels do have one interesting thing about them, though. And it's not very interesting. Power-ups, which each give you unique ability, like a double jump, super speed, or moon gravity. It's not a bad idea, to be honest, but they do nothing with them. One level has a power-up which makes you bigger, another has one which makes you smaller. Neither of them do anything. A double jump, okay, cool, but this game already has such floaty gravity that it just feels kind of pointless. You could probably reach most of the ledges you can only reach with a double jump with a boneless. The bonfire from the beach level sets your board on fire and makes it go faster. It does practically nothing. You could remove all these power-ups and the game would feel exactly the same, not unlike how you could change the background of all the levels and they would feel the same. But hey, the Create a Park mode is just fine. I'm serious, it's fine. There are a lot of options and a few templates, it's good. There's one major element of this game I haven't mentioned yet though. One of Tony Hawk's most popular elements actually, multiplayer. The multiplayer modes in Pro Skater are terrific, though I can't say I've really had much experience with them. This is a request to people I know. Learn to play Tony Hawk's Pro Skater so we can play multiplayer. Not only was local multiplayer huge, online was as well. Coincidentally, Tony Hawk 3 was the first PS2 game to support online play. Over the years, the series would garner a fairly large online community. Pro Skater 5 had online. The servers were shut down in 2018, about 3 years after the game came out. Shows about how popular this game was. There's one major problem with this though. The way this game was designed. Pro Skater 5 was designed and marketed as an always online multiplayer game. Which is dumb. Yeah, the multiplayer of Tony Hawk's Pro Skater is great, but the single player is just as important. Why else would the bulk of content be single player missions? But here, they want you to play the single player missions in multiplayer. Every time you start a mission, you have to choose whether to play co-op or single player, with co-op always conveniently being the first option on the menu. This extends to pretty much all of the menus actually. Once you pick a level, you have to choose whether to start a private match or a multiplayer lobby. Except the button to start a multiplayer lobby is X and the one to start a private match is triangle. Starting a multiplayer match obviously wouldn't even work anymore, but since the button to do so is the primary button rather than the secondary one, I'm constantly accidentally hitting the button and getting reminded of how much I don't have PS Plus. I'm lucky to be playing this game on PS4 because I've heard the Xbox One version doesn't even work anymore. Apparently you need to turn off the Xbox's Wi-Fi to even get it to start. This is the problem with designing a game with a primary online focus. Once its servers go down, which they will, you're left with strange design choices that just seem pointless to those coming back to the game years later. You pretty much kill all replay value in the process. By the way, there are 0 local multiplayer options in this game, no split screen co-op or versus, and the PS3 and 360 versions of this game have no multiplayer period, online or split screen. If you were going to build your game around multiplayer, you could have at least given options to try portions of that multiplayer offline. There's no reason a lot of these missions and multiplayer modes wouldn't work in split screen. Oh yeah, and by the way, you can't unlock Mr. King's quest anymore because the unlock condition involves playing online. Good job. This game is bad, but there is one thing I liked a little about it, and it's a common positive between all Tony Hawk's Pro Skater games, the soundtrack. It's not a huge soundtrack, but the songs they picked are pretty good. Now I would give you a listen, but Mr. Mohan already has me on a list for suggesting that idea earlier. So there you go, the best part of the game, and it's not even original to it, nor can I show it to you. Well, that's pretty much everything. I have to say though, I'm surprised. For the time I put into the game, I didn't encounter a single game-breaking glitch like you would see online. I saw a few minor ones, mostly visual, like pop-in and these random black squares appearing in one of the levels. The game had frequent frame drops, some worse than others, though it did run at 60 frames per second a good chunk of the time. There were a couple small bugs, like some physics glitches, but nothing major. This leads me to believe that, contrary to what I had heard online, the patches did do something. I was expecting a lot worse based on what I had heard, but I'm still left wondering how this game felt to play when it came out. Wait. I played this game for one reason. I was morbidly curious. And what do people who are morbidly curious do? Things they immediately regret. I'm deleting the game and reinstalling it without any updates. I want to see how the game was shipped. What people saw when they played the game at launch. Oh. Oh no.
I don't think it's supposed to be making that sound.
For some reason when I play the base game, any FMVs stutter like crazy. Or at least, they did the first time I launched the game without any updates. After that, it worked for some reason. There are a few other small changes I noticed. For one, remember how the UI looked straight up unfinished in the updated version I'd been playing? Well, it looks a lot more unfinished here. Just look at the button prompts for the tutorial. What's going on here? The double tap to super slam option isn't here at all, making it much easier to accidentally end a combo. I assume they added that option after getting complaints about how easy the super slam would end combos. But how about them glitches? Well, I gotta be completely honest, I tried to break the game in half. I really did, but it just didn't happen. There were a couple of small things, mostly just getting launched off of the board on ramps, but I really didn't experience anything major. I'm not going to discount what I saw online as really not that bad or anything because, well, look. But I'm really not interested in putting 5 more hours into the game just to see Mr. Hawk spaz out. In conclusion, this wasn't worth sacrificing my save data because obviously I value my Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 save data so much. Hey, quick aside for a sec. I'm seeing online that the base game for Tony Hawk 5 is actually like 4 gigabytes, which is strange because, you know, I uninstalled the game and I reinstalled it off the disc with none of the patches, and it's listing itself as 8 gigabytes. So I don't know if they like reprinted the disc with some of the updates pre-installed, but at that rate it still says version 1.0. So I don't know if anyone knows what's going on here. Feel free to let me know. Maybe this is why the game wasn't being super glitchy for me, but, you know, again, it says 1.0. So, I don't know. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5 is a lot of things. It is underwhelming. It is boring. It is glitchy. It is unappealing. It is badly designed. It is strange. But above all, it's not a good video game. Even if I didn't experience the horrible glitches you can find online, that, you know, now that I think about it, that kind of makes it worse. Remember how I said earlier that I liked games that are comically bad because of things like funny glitches? When you take away the admittedly pretty funny glitches, all you have left is a bland, ultra forgettable, and straight up bad game. There is no reason to play this game. However, I'm not going to sit here and act like I didn't have a single ounce of fun with this game. To quote GameSpot, skating is occasionally fun. Building up a massive combo will always be fun, and landing a few successful grinds and vert tricks in a row is pleasing to the brain, but the keyword in that GameSpot quote is occasionally. As fun as the main gameplay of the Tony Hawk series is, when you take the great physics engine and controls of the previous entries and replace them with infinitely worse versions, ew. That, combined with the bland missions that literally made me groan when I saw them, bad graphics, and depressing presentation, it all comes together to create Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 5. To reiterate, a bad game. About a year after Pro Skater 5's release, Robomoto shut down, being remembered as nothing more than that one studio that made 4 bad Tony Hawk games. But as of many games of this caliber, I don't entirely blame the dev team. I said before that this game was obviously rushed. Higher-ups at Activision probably saw their Tony license was set to expire in a year or less and pressured Robomoto to push out a THPS game, not giving enough time or budget to make the game the best it could be. And because of that, I do have some sympathy for the devs. Had Activision given them more time or a bigger budget or just any more care in general, it probably wouldn't be fantastic, but it would definitely be better. I'm not saying Robomoto is cleared of all charges here. They absolutely could have done a better job with certain things like level design, regardless of how much time they had. But I think it's fair to say a good chunk of the blame probably falls on the higher-ups at Activision. Luckily, even though Pro Skater 5 ended the series on a pretty bad note, the series was given a better chance with a comeback in 2020 through Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 1+2. Developed by Vicarious Visions, the same studio behind the Crash Bandicoot Insane trilogy, 1+2 is a full, from-the-ground-up remake, despite the marketing describing it as a remaster, of the first 2 Pro Skater games. Every level from both games are here, with the ones from Pro Skater 1 having added missions to match the number the Pro Skater 2 levels have. Most of the licensed songs from the originals come back too, alongside some new ones. There are a ton of returning and new pro skaters alongside a real creative skater, and most importantly, this game feels fantastic to play. The physics are stellar, and in addition to all the tricks from 1+2, tricks from 3 and onwards were added, like the spine transfer, revert, wall plant, and grind extensions. Not to mention the graphics, this game looks insane. The lighting is stunning on each and every level, and the game runs at full HD, maintaining 60 frames per second at all times. My god! The game has both local and online multiplayer modes, create a park, unlockable skate movies, a kick-ass soundtrack. This is fantastic. Vicarious Visions was the right dev team for the job, especially considering this is actually far from their first outing with the series. Previously, they developed the PS1 port of Pro Skater 4 as well as the GBA versions of the Tony Hawk games, which from what I understand are pretty dang good. As good as 1+2 is though, it isn't perfect. There are a few small gripes I have with it. For example, the Create a Skater. While it's so much better than the lame excuse for one in Pro Skater 5, it does lack a lot of options. No options for hiding weight, no funny options, and to my complete bafflement, absolutely zero glasses options. Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 from 2001 had a plethora of glasses options. How do you expect me to kickflip TC's roof gap if I can't see? Second, the Create Park. It has some cool features like the smart rails and ramps which you can bend and extend to your imagination's limit, but otherwise it's just kinda lackluster. There are only a handful of options for textures and colors to give objects, and you also can't put missions in your levels. Something you could do in Pro Skater 5. I'm honestly shocked, Pro Skater 5 did something right. I would congratulate Robomoto, but they're dead and won't be able to hear me. Finally, I don't like Ollie the Bum's new voice. Sorry to whoever voiced him. This is the part where I would say, boy, I can't wait for Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3+4. But I can't. Vicarious Visions was working on a 3 and 4 remake. I'm not sure how far into development it got, but it ultimately didn't matter because of everyone's favorite Activision Blizzard merger, which pretty much killed Vicarious. And from here, Pro Skater's future is uncertain. Will a 3 and 4 remake ever see the light of day, or did Pro Skater fall off its board, suffer a concussion, and die? No one knows. Until now, because Tony Hawk himself confirmed that something is indeed in the works, quote, there will be a future, haha!